7. Spiritual costs of mistreating a dark chosen one sent by God. There are people sent into this world carrying light so blinding it softens every space they enter. Their energy is warm, their presence is calming, and their message feels gentle and affirming. We love these kinds of chosen ones. We celebrate them. We listen to them. But what we don't talk about enough, what most people are afraid to even look at, is the other kind of chosen one. The kind that doesn't come to soothe you, the kind that doesn't come to speak softly or make you feel comfortable, the kind that comes to interrupt your illusion, to shatter your ego, to confront your shadow, and in doing so, they awaken something ancient inside you. These are the dark chosen ones. Not dark because they are evil, but dark because they've walked through depths most people fear to even acknowledge. They were forged in fire, not born in light, and they weren't sent to coddle the world, they were sent to correct it. Mistreating a dark chosen one is not like mistreating anyone else. You don't just hurt a person, you violate a divine contract. You don't just miss an opportunity, you trigger consequences that ripple beyond your comprehension. Because these beings are not functioning from ego, they are operating under an assignment. And when you interfere with that assignment, when you slander them, betray them, gaslight them, excommunicate them, or treat them as if they're disposable, you are not simply disrespecting a human. You are dishonoring a piece of God's strategy. And whether you believe in God, Source, the universe, or the divine intelligence that governs all things, one thing is universally true. Violating divine order always comes at a cost. I've seen it too many times to count. People who mocked, abandoned, or falsely accused someone who was sent to help them, only to watch their lives spiral into confusion, stagnancy, or strange misfortune. And the irony? They never connect the dots. They never realize the shift in energy started the moment they turned their back on the one who was sent to activate them. Because the dark chosen ones don't look holy, they don't walk in with halos, they don't speak in sugar-coated affirmations. They come with a disruptive frequency, a vibration that doesn't just heal, it exposes. And that exposure, it threatens the ego. It agitates the parts of us that want to stay asleep, so we reject them, thinking we're protecting ourselves. But in reality, we're rejecting our own liberation.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first spiritual cost of mistreating a dark chosen one is energetic inversion. This means that the very energy that was sent to elevate you becomes an energy that now refuses to serve you. The river doesn't stop flowing, it just stops flowing in your direction. You were meant to drink from that stream. That person was your assigned mirror, your breakthrough, your divine detour. But because you resisted the process, because you judged the packaging, you sent away the very thing you were praying for. And now, the drought begins. Not always physically, sometimes it's emotional, creative, relational. You just start to feel cut off. And that's not punishment, that's consequence. You turned away from your appointed portal. And portals don't chase, they close. The second cost is spiritual delay. When you hurt or dishonor someone who was sent to accelerate your growth, you don't just lose a relationship, you lose time, you lose momentum. You start reliving lessons you thought you already learned. You start seeing the same patterns loop over and over again. Because the divine doesn't move you forward until you've mastered what you were meant to learn. And if that dark chosen one was your teacher, even if their method was uncomfortable, even if their presence triggered you, mistreating them can freeze your evolution. You become spiritually stuck, and no amount of affirmations or vision boards can replace the lesson you avoided. But here's where it gets deeper. The third cost is ancestral disruption. Many of us don't realize that our lives are part of a broader lineage. We're not just here for ourselves. We are the living prayers of our ancestors, and when a dark chosen one enters your life, it's often not just for you. It's for your bloodline. They come to break generational curses, to introduce a new blueprint, to reroute the karma of your family. And when you mistreat that frequency, when you reject that divine intervention, you're not just blocking your own blessings, you're interfering with the healing of those who came before you and those who will come after. That's why some families stay stuck for generations, because someone along the lineage rejected the medicine when it finally arrived. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with it seriously. What if the person you couldn't stand, the one you judged, the one you ghosted or gossiped about, was actually sent to save you from yourself? What if their very presence in your life was an answer to a prayer you cried at 3 a.m., but because they didn't come dressed in light, you called them darkness? We often ask for transformation, but reject the form it arrives in, because transformation rarely comes in comfort, it comes in confrontation. The fourth spiritual cost is divine surveillance intensification. When you mistreat a divine vessel, especially one who walks with a dark frequency, meaning they've learned to wield both shadow and light with consciousness, you trigger a higher level of observation from the spiritual realm. Your name gets marked. Not in a punitive way, but in an energetic accountability kind of way. The universe starts watching your steps more closely. Your intentions get weighed more often, your actions carry more consequence, because you've shown you're not just dealing with people, you're dealing with assignments. And when you interfere with assignments, you invite scrutiny, you invite exposure, you invite a reckoning. This is not about fear. This is about reverence. Reverence for divine order. Reverence for the possibility that the person you least expected might be the person God sent to test your ability to perceive beyond appearances. Because dark chosen ones are often sent last, after the light ones failed, after the gentle ones were ignored, after the signs were missed. That's when the divine says, send the one they can't ignore. Send the one who speaks their language of pain. Send the one who's been where they are, but made it out. That's the dark chosen one. And if you mistreat them, you don't just risk losing a connection, you risk losing your exit route out of the very bondage you've been begging to escape. The divine trap: how rejecting the dark chosen one delays your own prophetic destiny. There is a sacred irony woven into the fabric of human evolution. The very thing we pray for often arrives in a form we were conditioned to fear. We ask for healing, and it comes through heartbreak. We ask for clarity, and it comes through chaos. We ask for purpose, and it comes wrapped inside a person who disrupts everything comfortable, familiar, and safe. That person, often misunderstood, often vilified, is what I call a dark chosen one. They are not sent to please you. They are sent to prepare you, to cut cords, to expose lies, to burn what no longer belongs. And when you fail to recognize them, or worse, when you reject, slander, or mistreat them, you don't just reject a person, you reject a divine trap that was designed to unlock your own prophetic destiny. The divine trap is not a punishment. It's a setup for your breakthrough. It's a moment in your life when God, Source, or infinite intelligence says, let's see if you've developed spiritual sight. Let's see if you can recognize truth without costumes. Let's see if you can trust vibration over appearance. Because here's the thing, the dark chosen one rarely looks like what your ego wants. They challenge your beliefs, they interrupt your cycles, they don't validate your illusions, they dismantle them. And that's the trap. You either lean into the discomfort and evolve, or you reject it and repeat. And when you choose rejection, you don't just lose a connection, you set your destiny on pause. I've seen it over and over again. People cry out for change, cry out for alignment, cry out to know their purpose, and then someone shows up in their life, a friend, a coach, a partner, a stranger, who carries the exact frequency designed to disrupt their stagnation. But because that person doesn't play by the usual spiritual rules, because they don't smile the way you expect, because their energy agitates your unhealed wounds, you call them toxic, you label them dangerous. You walk away, thinking you've protected your peace. But in truth, you've walked away from the very activation you were begging the universe for. This is the fifth spiritual cost of mistreating a dark chosen one: destiny detour. Your journey was meant to accelerate. Your timeline was meant to collapse into divine alignment. You were meant to awaken gifts, meet soul contracts, walk through doors only you could open. But instead, you delayed it. because you misunderstood the divine disruption. You couldn't see that the storm wasn't against you, it was for you. It wasn't chaos, it was a cleansing, but you labeled it wrong, and now you're stuck repeating lessons in new costumes, walking in circles, wondering why your life feels like it's on mute, on hold, on delay. Let me ask you something. How many times has the same lesson returned to you wearing a new face? How many relationships have ended the same way? How many opportunities slipped through your fingers because you weren't ready to receive the real, only the comfortable? That's the divine trap. It keeps testing you until you stop choosing familiarity over truth, until you stop idolizing aesthetics and start honoring alignment. The dark chosen one often comes looking like the opposite of what you prayed for, but their presence is the test. Can you discern soul over surface? The sixth cost is prophetic silence. You were meant to hear things, know things, speak things. You were meant to channel divine codes, unlock dormant gifts, and walk as a living message on this earth. But prophetic clarity requires alignment, and when you reject the divine appointment sent to recalibrate you, your channel gets clogged. The voice becomes static, the visions get blurry, the energy stops flowing the way it used to, because your destiny is not a solo mission, it is woven with others. And when you dishonor the threads God tries to weave into your path, you delay the tapestry of your own becoming. People often talk about missing the boat in life. But what they don't realize is that the boat doesn't always look like a golden opportunity. Sometimes it looks like a confrontation. Sometimes it looks like a person you don't like. Sometimes it looks like the one who tells you the truth no one else dares to speak. And if you're too prideful, too hurt, too addicted to your comfort zone, you'll miss the boat by mistaking the captain for a threat. That's what happens when you reject the dark chosen one. You mistake your sacred mirror for your enemy. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Your destiny is not guaranteed. It is not automatic. It is conditional upon your willingness to evolve. And sometimes that evolution requires walking with someone who irritates your demons, triggers your wounds, and refuses to let you play small. That person is not your enemy. That person is your divine trainer. And if you push them away, you push away the very weight you were meant to lift to gain your next level of spiritual strength. So what's the solution? Humility, discernment, the courage to revisit the people you misunderstood, the willingness to apologize, not because they won, but because you've grown, the bravery to reopen the door you slammed shut in fear and say, I see now. I wasn't ready before, but I am now. That's how you realign with divine timing. That's how you escape the trap. Not by chasing the light, but by learning to honor the shadow that came to guide you toward it. When the divine withdraws protection, the final warning for those who harm a chosen vessel. There's a threshold in the spiritual realm that most people never talk about, yet it is one of the most sobering realities you'll ever encounter. That threshold is what I call the point of divine withdrawal, the moment when grace steps back, when protection is lifted, and when the energy that once covered you begins to recoil. It doesn't happen randomly. It doesn't happen because of one mistake. It happens when someone repeatedly, knowingly, and arrogantly violates a covenant. That is, when they harm a vessel that God has anointed for a divine assignment. Not out of ignorance, but out of pride, out of ego, out of malice. The dark chosen ones in particular are most often subjected to this kind of mistreatment because they don't fit the mold. But make no mistake, their spiritual covering is not to be played with, and when they are harmed, slandered, cast out, or spiritually attacked, there is a moment, silent, unseen, when the divine says, enough. You might not notice it right away. The sky doesn't crack open, the ground doesn't shake, but something shifts. Subtly at first, your intuition begins to dull, your inner peace becomes elusive. Things that once worked effortlessly now come with tension. Relationships begin to feel strained. Doors that were once wide open begin to close without explanation. You think it's just life, you think it's just a rough patch, but in the unseen realm, a withdrawal has occurred. The divine has pulled back protection, not as revenge, but as a consequence, because you violated a law deeper than any man-made rule. You touched a vessel that wasn't yours to touch. You interfered with a mission that wasn't yours to judge. And now, that spiritual immunity you once had, it's been revoked. This is the seventh spiritual cost of mistreating a dark chosen one, divine abandonment of favor. Not total abandonment, God doesn't hate you, but the favor, the flow, the grace, the divine shortcuts, the unseen hands that used to move things in your favor start to vanish. Because favor is not a right, it's a responsibility. And when you use your free will to attack or undermine someone who was walking in divine assignment, the heavens don't get angry, they get silent, and that silence is terrifying. Because it means you're now walking through life without the covering you didn't even know you had. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer not with your ego but with your spirit. Have you ever felt like the universe just stopped responding to you? Like your prayers hit the ceiling? Like your manifestations lost traction? That's not always spiritual warfare, sometimes it's spiritual justice. Sometimes it's the consequence of hurting someone whose energy you didn't understand. Someone who triggered you, yes, but who was also sent to activate you. You see, dark chosen ones don't just carry messages, they carry contracts. When they enter your life, their energy begins to rearrange things. Even if you don't like them, even if they challenge everything you think you know, their presence is reshuffling your life into alignment. And if you cooperate with that, you grow, you evolve. But if you resist, if you attack, sabotage or slander them, then that same energy that came to elevate you now becomes a mirror that reflects your own spiritual immaturity. And mirrors don't lie. They just show you what you need to see. And what you see may be that you've been out of alignment for far longer than you realized. There is a heavy warning in Scripture and in almost every ancient spiritual system about harming prophets, mystics, seers, and divine messengers, not because they are better than others, but because they are connected in ways most people are not. They are walking conduits. And to harm one is not just to harm a human, it's to insult the intelligence that sent them. It's to say to God, I know better than you, and that arrogance, that pride, it always comes before a fall. Now here's the real danger. When the divine withdraws protection from someone who mistreats a chosen one, it doesn't just affect them. It affects everything attached to them. Their business, their health, their relationships, even their children's energy can be affected. Because energy doesn't work in isolation, it ripples. And this is why many people experience mysterious stagnation, sudden misfortunes, or inexplicable patterns of failure after mistreating someone who was sent into their life for a divine reason. They don't realize they've activated a spiritual principle. What you do to the divine will reflect back to you. But here's the grace in it all. The divine never withdraws protection without first sending warnings. Subtle ones, gut feelings, dreams, moments of discomfort after you've acted out of alignment, that sick feeling in your stomach when you know you've crossed a line, that heaviness in your chest after you've spoken ill of someone who was only trying to help you. These are not just emotions, they are invitations to repent, to realign, to humble yourself before the divine has to humble you. Because once the withdrawal happens, it's harder to get back what you've lost. Not impossible, but harder. And the longer you wait, the more tangled the web becomes. So what do? You go back. Spiritually, energetically, emotionally, you go back. You apologize where needed. You pray differently. You ask for clarity. You stop justifying what your ego did and start listening to what your soul is trying to teach you. And most of all, you learn to recognize chosen ones, not by how they look or sound, but by the disruption they bring. Because real spiritual teachers will never leave you the same. They don't come to please you, they come to free you. And if you mistake that freedom for an attack, you may find yourself outside the grace you once took for granted. The redemption code. How to spiritually reverse the karma of hurting a divine messenger. There's a moment in every soul's journey when the echo of their past actions begins to knock louder than their present desires. You feel it not just in your circumstances, but in your spirit. The doors that once opened with ease now creak with resistance. The clarity you once felt now flickers like a dying flame. And deep down, you begin to suspect, I did something wrong. Not wrong in a moral sense, but wrong in an energetic sense. You misjudged. You mistreated. You turned away from someone who was sent to assist in your awakening. Perhaps you mocked them. Perhaps you slandered them. Perhaps you simply dismissed them. But now, your soul knows, you rejected a divine messenger. And the weight of that decision is no longer avoidable. But here is the miracle that the ego doesn't want you to know. Redemption is always available, but it requires spiritual honesty. It requires you to be more committed to truth than to defense, because karma isn't about punishment. Karma is about reflection. It's about learning. It's about growing. And when you hurt a chosen one, especially a dark chosen one whose presence was meant to activate your dormant codes, you initiate a karmic loop. That loop will repeat until you break it consciously, and breaking it doesn't come from performing goodness, it comes from embodying humility. The first step in reversing the karma of hurting a divine messenger is acknowledgement. You must tell the truth to yourself, to the divine, and if possible, to the person you've harmed. This is not always easy. The ego will resist. It will say they were too intense, or they weren't perfect either. But karma doesn't respond to your justifications. It responds to your alignment. An alignment can't exist without truth. So you must face it head on. I mistreated someone who was sent for my elevation, not because you're evil, not because you're beyond repair, but because you were unaware. And now you're becoming aware, and that awareness is sacred. The second step is energetic repentance, not the religious kind, the real kind, the kind that says, I am willing to feel what I made others feel, not to suffer, but to understand. You sit with the weight. You let the emotion come, the regret, the grief, the if only I had known. And you don't run from it. You let it burn. Because that burning is not destruction, it's purification. It's the soul recalibrating itself. And when you let it move through you fully, you create space for a new vibration to enter, forgiveness. But forgiveness is not just about being forgiven by the divine or even by the person you hurt. It's about forgiving yourself. Because until you do, you'll unconsciously sabotage your own growth, believing you don't deserve joy, success, or peace. But you do. You always have. The mistake wasn't your end. It was your invitation to evolve. And the fact that you're still breathing means your story is not finished. The divine didn't cancel you, it called you higher, and now it's asking, will you rise? The third step is energetic restitution. This is about making things right, not just in words, but in vibration. Maybe it means reaching out to the person and offering a sincere apology, not to reconcile, but to release. Maybe it means speaking well of them where once you gossiped. Maybe it's praying for their well-being, or maybe it's simply carrying the lesson into every interaction going forward. Because the truth is, you may never get access to that person again, but you can still shift the field. You can still send love to the space where harm once lived. And the universe feels that. It responds to that. You start to notice your flow returning, your intuition sharpens, synchronicities reappear. That's the sign. The karmic loop is dissolving. Lastly, the most powerful way to reverse the karma is to become what you once resisted. You become the vessel. You become the messenger. You become the one who carries uncomfortable truth with grace, who walks in both shadow and light, who tells people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Because when you become the very energy you once rejected, you complete the loop. You transmute it. You evolve past it. You don't just heal yourself, you become a healer for others, and that's the ultimate redemption, not just being forgiven, but being transformed. Let me leave you with this. What if the very person you hurt was the version of yourself you were afraid to become? What if they showed you your future, and your fear clouded your vision? What if, by honoring them now, even in their absence, you could reclaim the timeline you thought you lost? You see, the divine never holds grudges. Only humans do. The divine holds space, and that space is always open for those willing to walk back their pride, pick up their lessons and say, I am ready now. And when you do that, the karma breaks, the cycle ends, the light returns, and the divine smiles, not because you were perfect, but because you finally remembered who you are. Now, ask yourself, who have I misunderstood that was actually sent to help me awaken? And what will I do about it now?